On a cold day in 1982 in April, London was in peace. But 8,000 miles away, on a patch of island unknown by many, Argentinian troops storm upon the island. They race towards Moody Brook Barracks, the headquarters of the British garrison on Falkland Islands. Since Britain colonised the Falkland Islands, there has always been dispute between Argentina and Britain over who actually owns the islands. The British started deploying troops to the Falkland Islands. They commandeered merchant ships and turned them into trooping helicopter carriers. A task force was set up. It was to be led by HMS Invincible, the newest aircraft carrier. These merchant vessels were the unsung heroes of the campaign. The British couldn't have done it without them. The journey wasn't easy though. 3 weeks of rough Atlantic weather. They would first stop at Gibraltar, a tiny area of land that is just south of Spain, and then onto Ascension Island, and then inevitably onto the Falkland Islands. When they got to the Falkland Islands, the fight would be tough. The Argentinians knew the British were coming. The British didn't deny it. Everyone saw the task force leave. It was only a matter of time before the British got there. They would have to get naval and air superiority first before any air or sea landing. It would be a tough fight. The first objective for British forces in the Falkland Islands and the surrounding areas was the small island of South Georgia, 900 miles south of the Falkland Islands. The British forces sent to recapture it consisted of 1 destroyer, 2 frigates, 1 submarine, 1 patrol ship, 8 helicopters and 250 ground troops. The Argentinian forces were 1 submarine and 90 ground troops. On the 23rd of April, the British learned through radio intercepts that an Argentinian submarine was approaching South Georgia. The arrival of the submarine posed a significant threat to the British task force, and Captain Brian Young was ordered to disperse his ships, except Endurance, outside South Georgia's total exclusion zone. The frigate HMS Brilliant, commanded by Captain John Coward, was diverted to South Georgia with 2 Lynx helicopters to replace the aircraft lost on Fortuna Glacier, but she was not due to arrive until the morning of the 25th of April. The Argentinian submarine successfully landed her reinforcements at Grytviken under moonless cloud cover in the pre-dawn hours of the 25th of April and was underway by 5 am. HMS Antrim's aircrew, which included Lieutenant Chris Parry, anticipated that Santa Fe would unload her troops under the cover of darkness and would withdraw at first light through Cumberland Bay without submerging. At 8:55 am in the morning, the submarine was located by Antrim's Wessex using radar and engaged with depth charges. 1 charge bounced off the boat's deck, but the other exploded alongside, rupturing the port ballast tank and piercing the external fuel tank. Now unable to dive, Santa Fe was forced to reverse course towards Grytviken. With Santa Fe disabled, Major Sheridan judged that the Argentines would be demoralised and that attack should be made immediately. However, his main force was still on board Tidespring, 200 miles away. A force was put together with various forces on board Antrim. These included M Company's command element and mortar troop, 2 SAS troops and the 2 SBS command and signal elements. for a total of 79 men. There followed a helicopter assault by an improvised group of Special Forces and Royal Marines, with 2 Royal Navy vessels, Antrim and Plymouth, conducting a naval bombardment demonstration on the low hills opposite Grytviken. The garrison at Grytviken and the crew of the disabled Santa Fe surrendered to M Company 42 Commando Royal Marines after 15 minutes. When the British task force arrived, the Argentines tried to pin them down in a pincer movement with a Skyhawk-laden carrier from the north and a cruiser and destroyer force from the south. HMS Conqueror, a Churchill-class attack submarine, which had been patrolling around the surrounding area, had spotted the Argentine cruiser ARA General Belgrano and managed to achieve a torpedo lock-on. At 15:57 Falkland Islands time, on the 2nd of May 1982, HMS Conqueror opened fire with 3 21-inch Mark 8 Mod 4 torpedoes, each with an 805-pound high-explosive warhead. 2 of the 3 torpedoes hit and impacted General Belgrano. The first torpedo struck 10 to 15 metres aft of the bow, outside the area protected by either the ship's side armour or the internal anti-torpedo bulge. This blew off the ship's bow, but the internal torpedo bulkheads held and the forward powder magazine for the 40mm gun did not detonate. The second torpedo struck about 3/4 of the way along the ship, just outside the rear limit of the side armour plating. The torpedo punched through the side of the ship before exploding in the aft machine room. The explosion tore up through 2 messes and a relaxation area called the soda fountain, before finally ripping a 20-metre long hole in the main deck. Later reports put the number of deaths in that area around the number of 275 men. After the explosion, the ship rapidly filled with smoke. The explosion also damaged her electrical power system, preventing her from putting out a radio distress call. Though the forward bulkheads held, water was rushing in through the hole created by the second torpedo and could not be pumped out because of the electrical power failure. In addition, although the ship should have been at action station, she was sailing with the watertight doors open. The ship soon began to list to port and to sink towards the bow. 20 minutes after the attack, at 16:24 p.m, Captain Bonzo ordered the crew to abandon ship. Inflatable life rafts were deployed and the evacuation began without panic. The 2 escort ships were unaware of what was happening to Belgrano, as they were out of touch with her in the gloom and had not seen the distress rocket or lamp signals. The 2 ships continued on their course westward. By the time the ships realised that something had happened to the Belgrano, it was already dark and the weather had worsened, scattering the life rafts. Argentine and Chilean ships rescued 772 men in all from 3rd to 5th of May. In total, 323 people were killed in the attack. The Argentines desperately wanted revenge. The British knew that ship losses were expected. Argentine aircraft regularly attacked the fleet and the Exocet anti-ship missile began to haunt Royal Navy crews. The first British ship to be sunk was HMS Sheffield, who was mortally damaged southeast of the Falkland Islands by an Exocet missile. She burnt out and sank in tow on Monday the 10th of May. 20 people died and 26 were injured. The second ship was HMS Ardent. She was badly damaged in Ramp and Sound by bombs. They were dropped by daggers, and then she was mortally damaged by bombs from Skyhawks off Northwest Island. She sank the following evening and lost 22 of her crew when she was sunk. The third ship was HMS Antelope. She was damaged in San Carlos water by 2 unexploded bombs. One of the bombs exploded that evening while being defused, and she caught fire and sank the next day. 22 of the 199 strong crew lost their lives. The fourth ship was HMS Coventry. It was a Type 42 destroyer, and she was sunk north of Pebble Island in her attack by 3 bombs from Argentinian planes, with the loss of 19 crew. The fifth ship was Atlantic Conveyor, and mortally damaged northeast of the Falkland Islands by an Exocet missile fired by a Super Etentard. She burnt out and later sank in tow. 12 men died on the Atlantic Conveyor, including the ship's master, Captain Ian North, who was posthumously awarded the Distinguished Service Cross. The loss of this ship was a disaster for the British, as the troop transport helicopters, the Chinooks, were on board. Only 1 Chinook was serviceable for the whole campaign in the end. The RFA Sir Galahad was the next ship to be sunk. She was mortally damaged off Fitzroy by bombs from Skyhawks and burnt out. Later in June, towed out to sea and sunk as a war grave. 56 people died on her, including 48 guardsmen who were on board waiting for orders to leave. This is the worst suffered of single loss of life since World War II by the British. And the final ship, or boat, was LCU F4 from HMS Fearless. She was a landing craft utility sunk in choice or sound by a bomb from A4 Skyhawk. All but two of the 8 people on board were killed. This was the last British vessel to be sunk in the campaign for the islands. Now came the time for the British to conduct an operation to take back the Falkland Islands. San Carlos water was chosen as the place for the beachhead to begin. The British strength was 2 destroyers and 7 frigates, 11 landing ships and sea harriers overhead on combat air patrol. The Argentinian forces were 90 fighter bombers on the main landing range and 2 Hercules tankers and 10 attack aircraft on the island. The code name for the British invasion would be Operation Sutton. They planned amphibious landings around San Carlos on an inlet located off Falkland Sound, the strait between East and West Falkland. The location was chosen as the landing force would be protected by the terrain against Exocet and submarine attacks, and it was distant enough from Stanley to prevent a rapid reaction from Argentine ground troops stationed there. The landing eventually took the Argentines completely by surprise. Navy officers had considered that the location was not a good choice for such an operation and had left the zone without any major defences. However, the Argentines soon found their way into San Carlos water and began a series of air attacks that would be relentless. In this footage here, British ships desperately try to take out an A4 Skyhawk that's flying overhead. Eventually, the Skyhawk is destroyed. It's a good thing it was heading straight for the SS Canberra, a passenger liner loaded with troops. If it had managed to hit it with a bomb, it could have destroyed and killed hundreds of British soldiers. During the battle for San Carlos, the British lost 1 destroyer, 2 frigates and 8 ships damaged, 4 helicopters were lost and 49 men were killed. On the Argentine side, 22 aircraft were lost. Throughout the course of the Falklands War, naval gunfire support from British warships significantly helped troops on land. A warship would sail into a place where an assault was about to be made early in the morning and bombard Argentine positions for hours on end with 4.5-inch shells. This was very effective and demoralised the Argentines quite severely. Royal Navy ships excelled in the role during Operation Corporate. From the initial contribution of the 3 Musketeers, as they were known, Alacrity, Arrow and Glamorgan, right through until the end of the campaign, Royal Navy ships never let down the land forces. They did not hesitate to risk themselves to provide support for the land forces. The most obvious example of the willingness of the ships to prioritise support for the battle over land over their own safety was HMS Glamorgan's contribution to the struggle for 2 Sisters on the 11th and 12th of June 1982. The ship's departure from the gun line was delayed until the support of 45 Commando Royal Marines was completed, but the ship was subsequently hit by a shore-based Exocet missile, resulting in the death of 14 sailors. After 74 days of relentless fighting, a ceasefire was declared on the 14th of June, and the commander in the Argentine garrison in Stanley, Brigadier General Mario Menendez, surrendered to Major General Jeremy Moore the same day. Throughout the campaign, 255 British military personnel were killed and 3 islanders. On the Argentine side, 649 military personnel were killed, 323 of which were on the General Belgrano. The task force soon started to turn north and head home. HMS Hermes arrived home on the 21st of July. Invincible returned in September 1982, however 6 ships did not return. The Argentine military government collapsed soon after the war.
Bye.